I think, and there it is. Well, good afternoon, good evening, good day. Bienvenidos, welcome one and all to our first reading of May for Cultivating Voices live poetry. I'm your host, Sandy Yannone. It is a joy to be following up Poetry Month, the great month of April, which was so exuberant and filled with poetry. But of course, it's always Poetry Month on Cultivating Voices live poetry, and it's always Poetry Day when we gather, and it seems only fitting to do anything that we can to like extend the great energy and love of poetry that gets incredibly amplified in the month of April in particular. So we looked for a fabulous opening kind of format for our Poets Focus to make something a little extra special, shiny for our opening reading for the month of May. And as many of you know here watching the program and participating, we open up our month always with a particular focus on a word and explore that word through poetry. Well, today we chose the word inspiration. And to encourage that exploration, we've prompted our readers for today, that we'll all be hearing from very shortly, to read a poem from a poet that's been an inspiration to the poet, and then share their own poem in dialogue with that poet of inspiration. Well, we have 12 featured readers, and as always, we try to get our bonus readers in to the 90-minute mark for our program. And so let's get started for today's reading. We've just got a fabulous list of folks from all different places around, and it's always a joy. And I want to remind you all to please, readers, today, feel free to put in the chat your upcoming readings or links to your websites. Let our folks reading and our audience here live in Zoom know about upcoming events, and also where they might purchase any of your wares, your great poetry wares. As well, I like to remind folks here with us live in Zoom to feel free to, of course, encourage and please send your support, encouragement, and delight with the poets respectfully in the chat. And those of you watching on Zoom, of course, you also, on Facebook, you also have the beautiful benefit of watching live with us, and welcome to you, as well as being able to share your comments in the live stream chat through Facebook. Any of you watching the recording, of course, hello and thank you, because you're one of the hundreds and hundreds of people who watch our program during the weeks, and it is a great it's just a great honor to be able to be with you on Sundays and support this incredible endeavor of poetry that we all love. Well, let's get to the poetry then. Our first poet today to kick off our Poets Focus on inspiration, none other joining us, I believe. I only know where people are from where they're from. They might be joining us from somewhere else, but I always say from that great city, Pittsburgh. I love it. I hope to be visiting this summer. Giulio Magrini, welcome.
Terrible town.
I love it. I love it.
Pinch hitting for Arthur Rimbaud today is W.B. Yeats, and I've merged my contribution for the reading into one poem. There's a picture of my nono with an inscription of the last line from a poem by W.B. Yeats. He wishes for the claws of heaven. It is displayed in our kitchen. Had I the heavens' embroidered claws, enwrought with gold and silver light, the blue and the dim and the dark claws of night and light in the half-light. I would spread the cloths under your feet, but I, being poor, have only my dreams. I've spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams. My dreams were your ashes, downtrodden, not embedded in luxury, a leaden crucifix and greasy black beads, the penknife and smile as you cut the peaches, rendering the sweetest offering, the sticky, outstretched finger, wiggling impatiently. My fantasies occupy your stars and reside in infinity. Tell me your dreams, and I will dance in them. You played your tune in countenance and speech, and I listened with delight. You knew our melodies to suit the harmony of our spirits. Yes, we share our steps in dances of rapture and revelation. Our blood and spirit twirled in chanting tender couplets. First, you with me looking up, as I always did, until this final turn to welcome the face of stars in the firmament. We are primed to take our places in supreme excursion together, to converse with a countenance of ecstasy radiating in every heaven. Thank you.
I love that. Occupy your star. Tell me your dreams. Giulio Magrini kicking us off for our reading today with our focus on inspiration and that pairing with W.B. Yeats. I mean, it's pretty good reading when you can start off feeling inspired by Yeats. Well, again, I'm so looking. I'm in anticipation of all the numerous ways I'm going to be tantalized today by these poems and these pairings of who folks are inspired by and how the poems emerged. And let's hear next from Ken Burch.
Let's try that again. Hello, everyone. Well, I hadn't realized until a minute ago that there was supposed to be a specific person this was inspired by. I was inspired by a general spirit's sort of the poetry of the people of the freedom struggle. There's a specific event that caused this poem to be written, but I'll just the line I'll use as can be taken as an inspirational line is the first line from the civil rights song. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on a walking, keep on a talking, walking on to freedom land. It's in this poem is prompted but not inspired by the death of the woman who caused the murder of Emmett Till. She is not the inspiration for anything, although the poem addresses her. And I guess it's saying that ultimately, in the end, she shall not prevail. Lament for the unlamentable, inspiration for question mark. Said to her, I'll not mention her name in the poem, by the way, since her name should be lost to the depths of time. You tried to slip away unnoticed. You tried to avoid attracting anyone's awareness that you were departing the surface physical level of the land of Mississippi, which in Ojibwe means great river, the land defined by what flows through and by it, feeding its living, concealing or trying to conceal the bodies it wishes no one to find. You hope to slip away from the level at which wildflowers emerge from the mud of the delta, from the banks of that long named river and of the other which flows in its humidity flowing way, called Tallahatchie, rock of waters to the Choctaw. They who were driven from its waters before others were thrown into those waters. You tried to leave without saying goodbye. You whose name shall not be heard in this poem, for you inspire nothing. Is that good manners for a proper Southern lady? You prayed to any deity who might listen, who might not turn away from all you may be, to let your memory be carried softly down without notice on the surface of those waters, unlike those whose weighted, beaten, burned bodies were cast forever into them, forever beneath the current which resists the current, beneath the waters which once bore life, in which once fed the fields of cotton, in which humans whose bodies were enchained picked that crop until they themselves withered on life's spine, ceasing briefly, then forced back again after barely a decade of semi-freedom, when Jim Crow was born with bipartisan consent, called sharecropping. Then, and in many ways now, though, they shared none of the wealth from the crop picked, a crop which enriched beyond any merit a small, lucky yet bitter, yet raging, yet pale few, some of which in states nearby were my kin. They who had driven the Choctaw mainly away while importing for a life of hereditary slow eradication. The non-consenting children of the land across a massive sea, a land which this land settlers had no right to steal anyone's children from, over an ocean touching all oceans, which touch all rivers, such as the river which once ran north, then for reasons science has not yet found, turned south to carry the crop which killed the imported to be imported other places where others would die, in the mills where it birthed the clothing of those lands. A river which fed the river, as did its tributaries, which I now list in the order they appear in the Wikipedia entry of the river that child was meant to be given to forever: the Coldwater, the Old Yannone, the Yannone Canal, Little Tallahatchie, Old Little Tallahatchie, Panola Equipment, Floodway, MacIver Drainage, Tipper River, Cassidy River, Black Bayou, Asplamore Creek, Tillatoba Creek, all of them bringing the soil meant to bury what you caused to have done. No, you whose name shall not be heard in this poem did not do it yourself. The blood was not on your hands, but it is always on your words. The currents of that tributary cemetery meant to endure what was done forever under Delta silt at 50-foot depth, forever and forever and forever, as it has so many others whose names are lost to us, are lost possibly even to whoever gods there might be, whose spirits to whom the soon to be departed, the soon to die in agony, few of us could visualize, begged for in their last thoughts. Near those silty depths, you caused that child to be thrown into, not just thrown into, but first slowly eaten, bruised, flesh desecrated in every way, bones broken beyond any normal limits of fractures. Face left no longer a face at the last shot above the right ear. What was left thrown into the river, the fan from a cotton gin, a device made to process the crop, picked by hands in chains tied around his neck to make sure he would never be found. All of this done slowly, over not just minutes, over hours. Through the rising and dawning of the sun, bringing with it a light those breaking this child wished to keep away from their land, from all this land, for every year beyond their dreamless souls could picture. Years later, you, store manager who shall not be named here, you admitted that most of what Emmett was killed for supposedly doing to you had never, ever happened. You did not say, I'm ashamed. You did not say I was wrong to lie and say it had. You did not say, I'm sorry. At most, you said, in effect, I'm sorry if you were offended. You insisted, though, that he whistled at some part of the lack of a damaged soul we share. You still thought to the end of your days that he deserved to die for the whistling, just for the whistling enough. Yet two others in the store that day said he never whistled at all. And if he had not whistling at you, his mother said that Emmett, since age 6, he'd had polio, gave him a stutter, had whistled to ease his stutter. You may have caused the torture of a child who thought nothing of you over what he had to do just to talk. But even then, there might have been fewer wishes for those like you. And like the worst of my Southern ancestors never wanted the children of the chain to speak in any way at all. And yet, this is meant to be a poem about inspiration, and in your way, in your corrosive, poisonous, cotton-mouthed, hearted way. You did not inspire yourself, but you gave Emmett, the child you consigned to the depths of Mississippi's crimes, the power to inspire. You gave him the power to inspire, to the very sight of what your husband and his band of brutals did to what had been his black and beautiful and blazing with brilliance countenance. The power is not just the power, but the power is to what you thought neither he nor any of the others you had sent to those depths before not only rise from the river you meant, but failed to consign his body to. You were not even competent in the task of disappearance, a task General Pinochet and the Argentine junta would perfect in later times in other lands with the support of our country's leaders. You could not fill those you meant to frighten once and for all back into their place or go anywhere close to their place. You made Emmett a breaker of every shackle you meant to clap every newborn black child into. You made the torment you inflicted on him the healing of 100,000 scars. And in this day, in this time, people like you seek a national divorce, dream, or should I say, whatever it is those free of poetry do instead of dreaming, of restoring all that was lost to the once chained, when the once chained said no more, all that you never deserved to have, that you had, that people of my gene pool had solely because we once could steal it, instead of erasing any memory that he ever was, that the nameless others ever were. You bring the proud, whistling spirit of Emmett Till, the spirit, like so many other spirits you meant to hide forever in the decaying muck of your now rotting heart, back to this world. And you inspire the song Emmett will whistle over the Tallahatchie, in which all you and some of mine brought to this world will be thrown to the depths you were always meant to inhabit, weighted down for all eternity by the cotton mill gin of the past's stubborn, sunburned arrogance. Thank you.
Wow. That is Ken Burch. That is definitely a poem of inspiration. Ooh. And unbelievably today, earlier this morning, I was reading Jericho Brown's poem Riddle, also about Emmett Till. How uncanny, like, ooh, those forces. I've been reading this collection, Poems for Political Disaster from the Boston Review. And if you've never read, well, first, if you've never read poetry by Jericho Brown, definitely look Jericho Brown up. But Jericho Brown's poem Riddle, also about Emmett Till. It wouldn't surprise me, and I would certainly definitely welcome someone, maybe it'd be someone in this room, because there's a number of you that are capable of doing this, of creating an anthology of poetry connected to Emmett Till and Emmett Till's memory. That would
Can I
be,
say, I'm sorry, can I say one last thing? I should have,
yeah.
I should probably have offered a trigger warning for that. And if I triggered anyone in not doing that, I do apologize for that. Wanted to say that.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you so much. That's Ken Burch, everyone. And I, again, yeah, encourage you if a good reminder that if that if you do need to offer a heads up to folks, feel free to do that as you're getting ready to read your poems. Well, our next poet of inspiration, of being inspired, is Jane Fitzgerald, and then we'll be followed by David Brydges. Nice to have you with us today, Jane.
Well, thank you. I was so thrilled when I saw this theme because it gives me a chance to talk about a poet that I love. And this is George Belger. Do any of you know him? He is, he's won a lot of prizes, including Pushcart. And I read this poem online of his called Horseplay, and it triggered something in me that made me write a poem that was not exactly the same, but you'll see. So this is called Horseplay. I am floating, this is his poem. I am floating in the public pool, an older guy who has achieved much, including tenure, a child, and health insurance, including dental. I have a Premier Rewards Gold Card from American Express, and my car is large. I have traveled to Iceland. In addition, I once met Toni Morrison at a book signing and she made some remarks that she found, I made some remarks she found extremely interesting. And last month, I was the subject of a local news story called Recyclers, Neighbors Who Care. In short, I am not someone you would take lightly. But when I begin to playfully splash my wife, the teenage lifeguard raises her megaphone and calls down from her throne, "No horseplay in the pool." And suddenly I am 12 again, a pale worm at the feet of a blonde and suntan goddess. And I just wish my mom would come and pick me up. So he writes a lot of things that are funny, but then have a twist to them. I don't know, but I'm surprised that most of you don't know George. You'll get a real treat by looking him up. Okay, so the idea of the pool made me write a poem, and it's not funny the way his is, but it does have a lot of the same characteristics. Okay, this is called Playland Pool at 13. It was one of those, oh, this is true, by the way. It was one of those days when the air shimmered with heat. All of my friends were being dropped off at the Playland Pool. I longed to be with them, splashing in icy water. It became a heated argument from the moment I asked. My usually calm father barked, "There is no way I'm allowing you to swim in a crowded public pool." His voice was solid, like a brick wall looming between us. I irately slammed against it, angrily shouting, he was keeping me from having fun, ruining my life. I stomped off to my room in tears, slamming the door behind me. Later that night, I heard my parents' muffled voices in the kitchen. My father's dampened reflections recalled his traumatic years, struggling with polio as a child. The disease had bequeathed a shriveled leg and pronounced limp. Custom-made clunky shoes were like a ball and chain, highlighting his infirmity. When polio stole his childhood, it was known to be transmitted in jam-packed places like huge pools. The disease had long ago been vanquished by a vaccine. That fact didn't erase my father's demons, which had remained submerged until my demands jolted them to the painfully revealing surface. I sank into remorse and shame for throwing him into the deep end where his past and present collided in pain. My immature, impetuous selfishness flooded my soul with drowning guilt, fathoms far deeper than any public pool. So the poems have in common that the pool represents both fun and anxiety, and that they're both based on a real experience. And the ending reveals a flashback, and something makes the flashback happen. So when I read George's poem, this thing about my father just hit me, because I never fought with my father much, and he was so adamant about that not going to a pool. I don't know if any of you have had relatives who had polio, because it's a race now, just almost virtually. Yeah. But
Jane, thank you so much. It actually evoked so much for me. I hadn't thought about even my own early childhood where where I where I did have that same kind of anxiety about going to a public pool. And that's so yeah, I mean, this is why I love poetry. This is why I love poetry. And I love listening to poetry, because at any particular moment, any one of us can be the inspiration for our own next poem. So I really appreciate that. I also want to encourage folks to also put in the chat for today your poet of inspiration, so that we're kind of
Right.
getting a reading list of
That's a good
if we want to look up
Right.
up the poets that we're being introduced to or reminded of. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Sandy.
So next we will hear from David Brydges, and David will be followed by Mona Zamfirescu. Thanks,
Good
David.
Yeah, hi, Sandy. Good afternoon, everyone. Cultivating Voices, Cultivating Us, once again. I'm going to bend a bit the theme. I've discovered a poet who's not a poet, but is a poet at heart. And he actually said from his writings were from a divine finger of poetry. My God, how eloquent is that? Bruno Schulz was an Austrian. I hope somebody knows him, because anyways, Bruno Schulz was an Austrian, Polish, Jewish writer and artist whose town he grew up in is now in Ukraine. So that line is probably a bit of history of Europe. His stories are just some of the most imaginative stories that I've ever read in my entire life. In fact, James Joyce actually learned Polish to be able to, he wrote in Polish, to be able to understand his short stories even better. I'm going to read an excerpt from his collection, Nocturnal Apparitions, and then I'm going to read a poem that inspired it. And it's from the short story called The Book. The book, somewhere in earliest childhood, at the first dawn of life, the horizon glowed with its gentle light. It lay in all its glory on father's desk, while my father, silently immersed in it, patiently rubbed the spine of those decals with a moistened finger until the blank paper began to fog up and become cloudy with blissful anticipation, suddenly shedding scraps of blotting paper to reveal a peacock's eye margin framed with lashes, as my own eyes dropped, half closing, to a virgin dawn of divine colors, to the wondrous wetness of the purest azures. Oh, that whipping away of the scales, oh, that invasion of radiance, oh, blissful spring, oh, Father. Sometimes Father would rise from the book and leave the room. Then I was left alone with it as the wind blew through its pages and the images leaped up. And while the wind quietly leaped through the sheets, blowing out colors and shapes, a shiver ran through the columns of its text, releasing flights of swallows and larks from between the letters. It soared, scattering page after page and melting into the landscape which it saturated with its colors. Sometimes it slept, the wind fanning it quietly like a 100-leafed rose as it opened its leaves petal by petal, eyelid after eyelid, all of them blind, velvety, and drowsy, concealing an azure pupil in their depths, a peacock's core, a screaming nest of hummingbirds. So this is This is the poem that it inspired, some of reading some of his short stories. The writer who slays the stale. The words longing to disperse the dark, to become complete again, and to return to its verbal homeland we call poetry. Bruno Schulz. With perceptual orgasms, he implicates the phrase, strange beauty is everywhere, because he holds the abnormal key to unlocking the realities of normal hibernation, temporarily opening the grandiose minute particulars, prose stuffed with stardust from afar and near, genius seeing the sacred in the commonhood, marvelous hometown architecture pleasures from counterintuitive servants of observance, a Baroque barbershop where every sentence hairline is from original deliriums. Luminous imagery leaps into spells, spelling spellbound. Microscopic eyes are cutting interior flesh with magnetic scissors in a fantastic factory. His gaze gallops valiantly to a golden hothouse, a clarity revealing inner clairvoyant eruptions. He points his imagination at reality, a paintbrush finger dipped in poetry's divine palette. Surges of insurgent extravaganzas speckling our infosphere. Bruno's mind is a machine gun of metaphors, quickly slaying any stale sentences before waving the white paper flag of surrender. Enraptured by riotous inspirations coming from alcoholic fireflies dancing wildly in the phantasmagorical night sky. Are we trapped in a mystic perfume shop? Has no one ever smelled before? Bedazzled readers, beware of intoxicant image bombs exploding in over-sweetened abandon. Scattered, we reach for raptured rafts, only to find them sinking too. Do you hear whispers from stories congregating on some ear bridge to everywhere, built on borders of rare travel beauty? If you do, you're breathing all there.
Oh, folks, yeah, this is, oh man. Again, thank you so much, David. What a poem, inspired by one of the most poetic non-poets I know. I mean, the imagination of Bruno Schulz is incredible, and you rise right up to it. Rise right up to it in your poem. I mean, so many memorable. Look at the chat. I'm reminding folks today for our poetry of inspiration. And what an inspiration that was. To please certainly do put the name of the poet or writer or inspirer in the chat, and perhaps a collection, if you've got the name of a collection at your disposal. I'll just mention, if you've never read any Bruno Schulz, perhaps one of my favorite titles of a book of all time is one of Bruno Schulz's, which is Sanatorium Under the Sign of the Hourglass. And his letters and drawings is an amazing book to read his letters and see his drawings. So thank you for bringing Bruno Schulz's inspiration to us today, David. Well, next in our fantastical journey into inspiration today is Mona Zamfirescu, followed by Josephine LoRe. Mona, I know you're going to share the screen. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I can't wait.
Well, thank you. I wanted to also thank David for mentioning a poet who's not a poet, but is a poet at heart. So that made me kind of feel at home as well. So thank you. I have a poem to start by Wallace Stevens, and then I'll share the screen after that. The poem is called A Rabbit as King of Ghosts by Wallace Stevens. The difficulty to think at the end of the day when the shapeless shadow covers the sun and nothing is left except light on your fur. There was the cat slopping its milk all day, fat cat, red tongue, green mind, white milk, and August, the most peaceful month. To be in the grass in the peacefulest time without that monument of cat, the cat forgotten in the moon, and to feel that the light is rabbit light, in which everything is meant for you, and nothing need to be explained. Then there is nothing to think of. It comes of itself, and east rushes west, and west rushes down, no matter. The grass is full, and full of yourself. The trees around are for you. The whole of whiteness of night is for you, a self that touches all edges. You become a self that feels the four corners of night. The red cat hides away in the fur light, and you are humped high, humped up, and are humped higher and higher, black as stone. You sit with your head like a carving in space, and the little green cat is a bug in the grass. And I wanted to share screen because this poem and my poem kind of met together on a blade of grass. So one came into my heart and then one out. So I figured I'd show. So my poem is called In the Heart. In the heart of the morning, raindrops lined on blades of grass. In the heart of a raindrop, shy rabbits sniffling light. In the heart of a rabbit, unfolding, trembling leaves. In the heart of a leaf, dark clouds concealing the sun. In the heart of a cloud, questions that won't go away. In the heart of a question, the dawn of the day.
Oh, that, first of all, that was such an evocative reading of Stevens. And then to hear your poem inspired by, and to be able to see it. What a gift. What an absolute gift. Oh, thank you so much, Mona. That was just fantastic. Kim, I knew this was going to be a great reading. I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you, everyone, so far. And again, please do, as I mentioned, feel free to put either the poem that's inspired you. I mean, that was a very specific poem by Wallace Stevens rather than the poet in general. And so feel free to put that poem in the chat for us all to remind us, because I'm sure people will want to go and reference both Stevens' poem and, oh, how memorable is that? Oh, just absolutely amazing. Well, next we get to hear from the fabulous Josephine LoRe, and will be followed by Elizabeth Lara. I'm so So great, this lineup today too of poets. Oh, welcome, Josephine. Good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'd like to acknowledge that the lands where I live in Calgary are the traditional ancestral lands of a number of Indigenous groups. I'd like to thank them and their antecedents and their descendants. And the groups are Pakani, Tsutsina, Nakota, Gainai, and Siksika. And the first poet is Leonard Cohen. And I don't have the specific poem, but it came from his posthumous collection, The Flame. And it was a line, when I wake up into panic. And panic is something that he wrote about quite often. So dance me to the end of time. There's a line in there, dance me through the panic till I'm gathered safely in. And I'm gonna read my poem from the tablet. No, I'm gonna read it from my computer. When I wake up into panic, my heart racing, my mind blank, I reach for your slender collection, the first book of my New Testament. Open at random, certain that you and the nameless gods of Revelation will know what I crave. Like a cigarette, I strike a match to your words, inhale deep, letting the burn light a path to my stone soul. Your voice gravelly smooth, like a hand sliding between silken thighs, like tulips picked too early, set in tall blue vase, in southern window, warmth and water to coax them into bloom. The second poet that I would like to bring is Pablo Neruda. And the collection is The Captain's Verses, the Love Poems. And it's a nice collection because it has the Spanish on one side and the English on the other. And without trying not to massacre the language, I'd like to read the poem in Spanish. El viento en la isla, wind on the island. El viento es un caballo, óyelo como corre por el mar, por el cielo. Quiere llevarme, escucha, como recorre el mundo para llevarme lejos. Escóndeme en tus brazos por esta noche sola, mientras la lluvia rompe contra el mar y la tierra su boca innumerable. Escucha como el viento me llama, galopando para llevarme lejos. Con tu frente en mi frente, con tu boca en mi boca, atados nuestros cuerpos, el amor que nos quema. Deja que el viento pase sin puede llevarme. Deja que el viento corra, coronado de espuma, que me llame y me busque galopando en la sombra, mientras yo, submergido, bajo tus grandes ojos, por esta noche sola, descansaré, amor mío. So the line that I took from that is, escóndeme en tus brazos por esta noche sola, hide me in your arms just for this night. And hide me in your arms from the clawing hands of time. Still the pendulum, let the world spinning stop. Your heartbeat keeping rhythm to our love. Eyes convey words that no human ear can hear. Fingertips trace unspoken promise unto flesh. The sun goes down and rises up again as we glide our way back to the ticking talk of time. And if there is time, I do one more. The author is Ella Zeltzerman. She's Russian-born. She emigrated to Canada, and her collection is called The Air is Elastic.
The air is elastic.
Sunday morning breakfast. I whisper into your ear so you hear and do not hear how I am a gypsy, black hair, golden hoops in my ears, noisy tabor, husky voice, songs, guitars, stars from the sky meet stars from the fire. Your eyes, dark of night, scarlet of frame, pierce my body. I dance, shake half-naked breasts, faster, faster, coming closer to you, closer, closer, and your hands, hot and large on my breast, embrace all of me, and you bite. Whisper how I am a slave in your harem, bright blue tiles with red tulips, water fountain, brazier, garnet hot coals swarm the room, my veils quiver. Golden shalvar among rose petals I lay on the floor at your feet. Tanbour sounds, you smile, almond eyes burn my limbs, your hands touch my bare-skinned stomach. I am aflame, I am blazing. And from that one, my name is Oblivion. I whisper into your ear, so you hear and do not hear, from Ella Zoltzman. I whisper in your ear, so you hear and do not hear. Our rhythms fill the pauses in our breath. Rhyme entwines us like a villanelle. In the ruby light of oil lamp, I stand before you loosely, concealed only by the shimmer of a veil. The curves of my country, the rise and the dip and the long, slow valley where the weight and the warmth of your hand once summoned me from sleep. I pour into your glass sweet drops of lethe. We shed our skin and swim beneath the substance of a dream. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Wow. That's Josephine LoRe, everyone. Oh, entwined like a villanelle. What? Oh, I will never, ever, ever now think of the villanelle. The same. Oh, which is again what I go to poetry for, to to be transformed, to be transformed from what I think I know, and to see and to experience something all anew. And Josephine, you do that every time. But it's so special to hear the different inspirations that are the underpinnings of your work. Oh, beautiful. Just absolutely beautiful. Thank you. And do be sure to put those poets in the chat for all of us. Well, next we'll hear from Elizabeth Lara, followed by Mona Lynch. Welcome. Great to have you with us today.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Okay, so I have a poem. Back in 2005, I took a workshop with Terrence Hayes, and he is just absolutely one of my most favorite poets in the whole wide world. I think he's just brilliant and creative, and he's given us the Golden Shovel and just a lot of other things. Anyway, so I'm reading from Wind in a Box, which is an older book, and then I'll read my response to that poem. The title is "It Can't Be Good Sitting Around Imagining Your Death." Anyhow, leave the World Book encyclopedias to the book peddler who will never travel beyond the poor Black college kids peddling their history books at semester's end. It might be the grass growing on the plots of dirt above our ancestors that makes me say this. It might be the white woman or man our son or daughter will marry, and the white woman or man our grandson or granddaughter will marry, all of them wading into the future until one of our line claims to be Sicilian. Leave instructions. The granddaughter of our granddaughter shall be named Sicily. If all men are created equal, all men are prophets, at least at the very start and end of their lives, I bet. Sicily, as the curse I'm casting here prescribes, won't like Blacks any more than she likes looking into a mirror in a burning house. Still, I can almost promise you time travel will never be invented. At first, Sicily will think someone rescued our photograph from a puddle of ashes. It's like those stories we wind up telling ourselves about ourselves after our friends are gone. It's as if we will always be somewhere smiling or singing. Maybe you can imagine the end of the line, baby, but history is beyond me. I admit it. Either she will discover my apology or she will never be forgiven. And that will be a function of the curse. It's like one of those days that are wished for but never guaranteed. She will marry a man who says, but blacks are different. They were burned black by God. They dance in their sleep. I love you will slither from its little sheath of hunger, and that too will be a function of the curse. Which is why not too long ago, you and I argued about race, and the question was, if I don't believe in evil, do I also not believe in good? I meant to say yes, because my mother loved me as if one of us was two people. Remember when our 3-year-old asked why we weren't white? To be black is to blacken a little every day, I should have said. And how at the end of a life filled with music, we all go without singing. Okay, so my poem is called Sitting Around Imagining Your Death. I took part of his title. And then I also have an epigraph, which is from his poem. It might be the white woman or man our son or daughter will marry, and the white woman or man our grandson or granddaughter will marry, all of them waiting into the future until one of our line claims to be Sicilian. Dear Terence, here in the living room, the clock is stopped at 10 after 10, and I am reading your poem. I know it is the middle of the night, because the sky is black and the silence in the streets tells me so. Even the roosters, because you see, T, I'm in another country. Even the roosters are sleeping. The tropical August air presses down on me. The title jumped off the page at me, although the death you imagine is a dilution, a denial, a gradual disappearance, rather than an abrupt extinction, the matter of which is pressing on my mind, despite the pressing question of how at 16, my pale, blonde, blue-eyed grandson will introduce his Black Dominican grandfather to his pale, blonde, blue-eyed girlfriend, or not. What caught my attention was your suggestion that it can't be good sitting around imagining your death. That, T, was exactly what I was doing when I picked up your book, The Cessation of Blood, My Cadaver White Skin, My Bones to Ash. Thank you.
Elizabeth, I have to ask, have you shared this poem with Terrence Hayes?
I certainly thought about it, and I mean, I know I've met him, so I thought I should send it to him before I ever read it anywhere, actually. Yeah, I should send it to him. Yeah.
I really want to just, I mean, us, like knowing that we're in, that we all appreciate knowing that we're in dialogue with one another. And I just think that, he would, I don't know him I don't know him well. I've only met him a few times myself. I think he would appreciate the connection between the two poems immensely. So I really want to encourage that. And I want to encourage all of you, if your poet is still, or your source of inspiration is still with us, to reach out. It's an opportunity for fostering a new connection. And for those of you who also might not know Terence's work, I want to also just amplify and highlight what I think is one of the most, I mean, I'm going to go out here on a limb and I'm going to say one of the most important books of the 21st century of poetry, which is American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin. And I really don't think I am being, I don't think I am exaggerating when I say that. I have a little penchant for that, but I really don't think I am. So I encourage you all, if you're not familiar with Terence's work, to connect with it as soon as possible. And also, if you ever have the chance to see him read and talk about his poetry, as Elizabeth said, he is brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Great reader, great poet. Thank you so much. Well, oh my gosh. It's just so amazing to be witnessing all these connections and what they are inspiring. And that is the focus of our Poets Focus reading today on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry, the word inspiration. And if you're just joining our program and listening, we're hearing poems that have inspired our poets reading today to write their own poem. And we're getting to hear that amazing connection live on our program. Well, next we will hear from Mona Lynch, followed by Lynda V. Crawford. Mona, great to have you with us today.
It's great to be here. And my inspiration is Seamus Heaney, and he wished to produce a collection of his own favourites, but never got around to doing that before he died. So his family produced this book of Seamus Heaney's 100 poems, what the family favourites. And the one I'm reading today is called Digging. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests, snug as a gun. Under my window, a clean, rasping sound. When the spade sinks into gravelly ground, my father digging. I look down till his straining rump among the flower beds bends low, comes up 20 years away, stooping in rhythm through potato drills where he was digging. The coarse boot nestled on the log, the shaft against the inside knee was levered firmly. He rooted out tall tops, buried the bright edge deep to scatter new potatoes that we picked, loving their cool hardness in our hands. By God, the old man could handle a spade, just like his old man. My grandfather cut more turf in a day than any other man on Toner's bog. Once I carried him milk in a bottle, corked sloppily with paper. He straightened up to drink it, then fell to right away, nicking and slicing neatly, heaving sods over his shoulder, going down and down for the good turf, digging. The cold smell of potato mould, the squelch and slap of soggy peat, the curt cuts of an edge, through living roots awaken in my head. But I've no spade to follow men like him. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests. I dig with it. And then I happen to have written a poem that ties in with that. These two short poems are inspired by the fact My mother had 7 brothers who followed her, the only girl. And so far, I've managed to do a poem about 2 of them. And the first one is called Jimmy. I watch him silhouetted against the sky, his cottage above the road, his garden higher again, girdled with currant bushes, black and red gooseberries too. Sunshine blazed as with rhythmic strokes he lifts the spade, clearing the drills, rising to the spuds. Regimental rows of cabbage speckled with ravenous caterpillars. Fern-like foliage of carrots hiding juicy tubers. We both sit on upturned drums, catching up with our worlds, breathing in the fresh scent of the earth. He scrapes his plugged tobacco and fills his pipe and puffs. His soul at one with his garden. A slow world of dignity and respect. I sat by his bed on his last day, told him of the huge beetroot I was given that day by a neighbor. With his eyes closed, he whispered, "No beetroot should be bigger than an eating apple." Now, I have a second short one about the youngest of the 7 uncles. In 1941, in World War II, on the HMS Repulse, it was torpedoed by Japanese off the coast of Malaysia. And he, as a 21-year-old, was on board. This poem I called Telegram. Nothing could stop him, though he lied about his age in his first application. They eventually accepted him, her youngest son, handsome in his Navy uniform. Letters arrived intermittently, black blocks hiding his precious words. A sepia photo with a group of friends on board his beloved HMS Repulse. She toiled uphill past his school on Strawberry Hill 14 days before Christmas. Urgency in her step. Puddings to boil, a fruitcake to bake in the Bastable oven. Captain Tennant held his head, pride and confidence in his men and in the accompanying HMS Prince of Wales. But they were no match for the torpedoes coming at them like a swarm of angry bees. She sat by the open fire, her face buried, a telegram dangled from her fingers. On the day he'd left, she reminded him to pack his clothes brush.
That's Mona Lynch, everyone, with 2 poems inspired by Seamus Heaney. Oh, what an amazing reading. It's so evocative, all 3 of those poems. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm getting so swept up with the poetry today. I'm just feeling so uplifted and, well, what can I say? Inspired. And maybe today's reading will inspire more poems by those of us in the room and or hearing all these poems today. So if you are inspired by any of the poems today, please do come back and read your poem for either our wild card open mic upcoming or a future reading. Let us know. Well, next we'll hear from Lynda V. Crawford, followed by Catherine Ronan. Lynda, welcome to you.
Yes, thank you. It's
Oh.
wonderful to be here. I will say it is edifying, honestly. This just from right up from the start. It's been fantastic. So really appreciate it. The two poems I'm going to read are very, very short. I know poets say that, but these two are very, very short. And so I will just tell you up front just a little bit and then read the two short poems. In my undergraduate days, decades and decades ago, at the University of Connecticut, this was in the 70s. So this was the time when Gil Scott-Heron, Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni, those folks were coming to the campuses, and young student, burgeoning in like political leanings, et cetera, got a chance to meet all of them. And what is uncanny is that over the years, I veered away from poetry, and then gradually now I'm veering back. And I've been looking at poems by these poets that I had met, but had sort of set aside and went into journalism. What is uncanny, and then I will read the two poems, is that I wrote a particular short poem and only later on found the poem from Nikki Giovanni that really struck me in the way those poems appeared. So I will say that they touch on that sense of human beings or fear of the other or others, and to the point of either being willing to kill or debase or disregard because of fear of the other. And written totally separate, no sense of Nikki's poem, but now they're together in my mind. So let me read them, as I said, very short. Allowables by Nikki Giovanni. I killed a spider, not a murderous brown recluse, not even a black widow. And if the truth were told, this was only a small sort of papery spider who should have run when I picked up the book, but she didn't. And she scared me, and I smashed her. I don't think I'm allowed to kill something because and I am still kind of in shock, and it's uncanny unless somehow that poem seeped into me without me being aware of it. Here's the poem that I wrote. Hers probably had a kinder ending than mine. Colonialism, an unchecked instinct. The speed of my hand as it picked a nearby holy card, swiftly smashed it down on the head of a fly. I am stunned by the still, the silver sheen near its eyes, the black of skin. I register the saved savor, still warm, sweet tea, touched by the white from an unknown cow. The end. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, that is truly uncanny if it is not that vestige of your memory coming
So,
back through.
yeah.
Amazing.
I have no
Amazing.
idea, but I am thinking that generation after generation, we are just, that message is still there. The cycle of life is there, and we're continuing and just passing messages in the ether sometimes because these are things that still need to be spoken to because they haven't been solved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow.
Thank you.
I mean, again, I mean, it's unfortunate that you cannot share that with Nikki Giovanni, you know, I mean, other than through the divine that you just have, right? I mean, that's amazing. That's just absolutely amazing. Lynda V. Crawford, everyone. Thank you so much. I am just, yeah, I am stunned by the poems today. I am stunned in the best possible way. Oh my gosh. All right, Catherine, Ronan is next. And I'm glad we're getting close to the close to the end, because I almost can't take all of this. Like it's so amazing.
It's so amazing. It's
So
so
amazing.
it's so amazing.
It's so amazing. So amazing.
So I'm going to read two poems. They've both been accepted by Long Island Sounds Anthology, New York, baby. Woohoo! So big news for me. This is inspired by Paul Casey. I did creative writing with him in UCC, University College Cork, and we were encouraged to write about our spirit animal. So this is called Black Eagle. We gallop as one over yesterday's land, nostrils flaring, riding tailwinds, grass and dirt rising, but no blood today. Take me bareback into ancient ritual, unbridled mystic of the wild, crashing in roaring dark seas, crossing fast and furious white water. Straddle, black eagle, climb out of that ravenous place we once called ours. I hear you, whisperer, speaking to my saddened soul. I see you, witch, gasping in all your purple glory. Tell me, what news of home? Sing to me of tomorrow. The second poem that was accepted by Long Island Sounds Anthology. I meant to say that Black Eagle took, like, seemingly simple, took me 3 years to write, and this one took me 2 years to write. But anyway, it's inspired by the first boss I ever had in public service, a guy who had animal magnetism. His name is Tony. It's called Across the Universe. Across the Universe. I expect to see you around every corner, especially when it rains, but I know you footprint a different world now. We embraced here on cobbled paths, threading the same blanket dream, laughing at the moon lying on its back. I know your song rising from the river, stroking my legs on the corner of Patrick Street. You always did keep magnets in your pocket. Do you ever see me in clinking celebrations? Feel me dancing in the pale silver snake of your lazy cigarette break? I see you everywhere, hear you everywhere, sleep with you in the eye of every storm. I miss you.
Beautiful, beautiful reading. Wow. That is Catherine Ronan, everyone. And just, if you do not know the work of Paul Casey, definitely connect with Paul Casey. Paul happens to be one of my Salmon siblings at Salmon Poetry, and is also the curator, the ringmaster of one of the most heralded reading series, I think, in all of Ireland, and Ovale. And if you ever get a chance to go to Cork and participate, it is something to experience. Thank you so much, Catherine. Well done, and congrats on the publications. And, you know, I want to even mention that what I really appreciate about what you talked about is that a poem inspired by someone else does not always manifest itself like a strike of lightning. You mentioning that it took 3 and 2 years to write these 2 different poems. And so that inspiration, you know, can percolate and sit with us for a long time, And I appreciate being reminded of that. Thank you so much. Well, I look forward to hearing the contribution today from Max Vandersteen, and Max will be followed by Jennifer Elise Wang. Welcome, Max. Great to see you today.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy. It's great to be here today, and what a terrific idea for a theme for today's show. Just to listen to the poems that everybody's written, original poems that they've read, and the inspired poems that they created. It's been great. I'd like to just give a brief background on the poem I've selected to share, or poems I've selected to share today. Last year was the 30th anniversary of the Edmonton Stroll of Poets Society. And one of the projects that we did was very similar to this theme. It was called a remix, where we asked members of the Stroll to create poems inspired by past members of the Stroll, and selected from one of the anthologies, which have been put out over the last 30 years. So, and these poems that were created were then posted on the Stroll of Poets website, and you can find them there. But okay, the poem I picked was from the 2011 Stroll of Poets anthology, and it was written by the poem that inspired me to write was written by Sandra Mooney Ellerbeck, who was the president of the Stroll of Poets at that time in 2011. And coincidentally enough, the poem that she wrote was inspired by her aunt Velma. So it's kind of a inspiration from an inspiration poem. So I'd like to go through the 3. And then the first one, Sandra's aunt, Velma, was called Dreamer. And it went, I didn't sail to Australia or discover a lost city in Peru. I didn't walk on the wall of China or become a great poet. I didn't hybridize a new rose, sapphire blue. Instead, I followed trails that stopped before they arrived anywhere, lost myself in what was expected of me. Now, there isn't enough time to fulfill all these dreams. Perhaps there never was. And that was written by Velma Wilson, who, as I said, was Sandra Mooney Ellerbeck's aunt. And the poem that Sandra wrote in response was called In Response to My Aunt Velma's poem, Dreamer. And it went, or goes, I should say. I didn't sail to Australia, but I tasted sea salt on my lips. Soul sipped from Vancouver Island to Hawaii, Florida to California coasts. I didn't discover a lost city in Peru, but I found artifacts in my awakenings. I didn't walk on the wall of China, but I walked through Tai Chi. I didn't become Plath, nor did you, but our poems thrive, bloodlines. I didn't hybridize a new rose, sapphire blue, but I harvested seeds, passed the flowers on, and I followed trails that stopped before they arrived anywhere, lost myself in what was expected of me. But I find myself again and again within dream invention and time still a sea to sail. So in response to that poem, I wrote a poem that I called Destiny. I'd like to share that with you now. Through times I really tried for you, and for my sons and sometimes others too. What dubious dreams went undelivered, were detoured, or alas, unconsidered, oft laid aside were things I'd wished to do, though aims nor motives never were untrue. As love both drove and subdued desires, responsibilities and reactions, provisions, careers, and consequences impelled the subsequent choice of actions. During a life's quest for identity, not often consumed with defining me, destinations of which I keenly dreamed remained more often than not unredeemed, and ambitions in which I had believed continue often to be unachieved. Seemed servile striver was my destiny. Yet please don't let these words be misconstrued. 'Twas my heart that acted as pathfinder. These roads I've chosen, and no routes are rude. Independence gained through now loosened bonds opens portals, and the spirit responds to diversions at one time not eschewed, which now can be spontaneously pursued. Blessed with latitude, happiness, and good health, and contempt for inequities of wealth, 'tis time to amend the search for gainful ends, to write for our rights and equality, explore the exquisite global wonders, and tend to needs of our humanity. Thank you all, and thank you for bringing this wonderful afternoon to us, Sandy, Kim, Don.
Thank you. Thank you. That's Max Vandersteen, everyone. And I do love that idea of the remix. That's so cool. And also how you utilized like not only the doubling of inspiration, but the tripling of inspiration. Really that thread of legacy that can happen with a poem inspired by a poem inspired by a poem, or a poet. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Max. And fantastic. Well, we will hear now from Jennifer Elise Wang, followed by Don Krieger. Jennifer, great to have you with us today, as always.
Yeah, I'm really happy to join, and was really excited for this theme. I had one thing in mind and then changed it, and you'll find out why, but I'm kind of continuing the idea of 3 generations of inspiration, because so I'm digging way back into my old poetry where as a teenager, I came across this book called Demon in My View by Amelia Atwater Rhodes. And she took that title from Edgar Allan Poe's Alone. And I loved both the book and the poem, and that wound up inspiring me to write as a teenager. And so I'll read the poem that it inspired, a bit from the book, and then my own fiction piece that I later wrote. So here's Alone by Edgar Allan Poe. From childhood hour, I have not been as others were. I have not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passions from a common spring. From the same source I have not taken my sorrow. I could not awaken my heart to joy at the same tone. And all I loved alone. Then, in my childhood, in the dawn of a most stormy life was drawn from every depth of good and ill, the mystery which binds me still, from the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky as it passed me flying by, from the thunder and the storm and the cloud that took the form when the rest of heaven was blue, of a demon in my view. And so my poem is called Demon of Inspiration, because I, as a teenager, was kind of a little goth kid, and also decided that no, I don't have a muse, I have a demon of inspiration, because he tends to keep me up at night and appear at inopportune times. So this is the poem, Demon of Inspiration. I see a shadow behind me, but nobody's there. I hear a whisper in the wind, but nobody's there. I feel a breath upon my neck, but nobody's there. Haunting me in the night, in my dreams, one reflects my darkest desires of a beauty so terrifying, like silent death. Your enigmatic apparition. I smell your lingering scent, but you're not there. I taste your sweet kisses, but you're not there. I feel your eternal pain, but you're not there. Appearing without warning, transcendent, ephemeral, you are gone when I need you, leaving me in the darkness with only a verse, my demon of inspiration. And so I'm going to read a little bit of the story that kind of inspired it all from Amelia Waters Rhodes, Demon in My View. And she wrote this as a teenager too. So I think that's also kind of what got me into writing. So here's the excerpt. He had murdered any illusion of the human Alex Remington. The golden pendant had been replaced by a spiked dog collar, and he was wearing a black t-shirt that hugged his form and showed off the many designs on his arms. Fenris on the right wrist, and Echidna, the Greek mother of all monsters, high on his left arm. The Norse world serpent wrapped around his left wrist, and a new design had recently been added. Cerberus, the three-headed dog who guarded the gates of Hades. The world serpent was partially covered by a black knife sheath, which held the silver knife Aubrey had taken from a vampire hunter a few thousand years earlier. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he had been running, and a few strands fell across his face. Looking at him now, Jessica couldn't imagine how she had ever mistaken him for a human, but illusion was Aubrey's art. It was simple to fool people who expected nothing else. And then the excerpt from my story that I turned my poem into in college, Demon of Inspiration. Even if the more time we spent together, the more often he would wear little or no clothing. I never stopped admiring the body that Michelangelo's David would be jealous of. Chiseled yet not overly muscular with smooth porcelain skin that was always cold to the touch. It was as if someone really did carve him out of flesh-colored marble. Of course, his looks were undermined by his ability to read me, to know my thoughts and express them more eloquently than I could verbally. He truly was a calligrapher with speech, altering intonation and inflection to make a word more seductively pleasant, or to drive a point home to where it would echo in my mind. I would crash headlong into a watery grave if he asked the right way. Fortunately for me, he didn't want to be viewed as a siren either. And that is all.
Again, I love this. I love this thread of finding, and that how sometimes we reach so far back for our inspiration and are able to carry it forward from one voice to another. Oh, it's just been that's just an astounding thread to have pulled through to your own work, and to also use your fiction for the inspiration to create the poem, like this additional layer. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. That's Jennifer Elise Wang, everyone. And we'll now hear from Don Krieger.
Sandy, I did slip in one more poet before you and Don. I'm sorry, Phil Lynch.
Oh, Phil, of course. My great apologies. Thank you. So sorry.
Thank you, Sandy and Kim and Don and Dave and everybody. I did slip in here. I wasn't intending to, so this is totally unprepared. Well, pretty much unprepared. Because I was thinking when I saw the theme during the week, I had a poem in an anthology some years ago on the work of Patrick Kavanagh, which we were invited here, the editor was Eileen Casey, to produce a response or an up-to-date poem, if you want to, for want of a better expression, in response to poems of Patrick Kavanagh. But anyway, I had discarded that idea. But as the night went on, I was enjoying it so much, and I was inspired to use that word, particularly when Josephine mentioned Leonard Cohen as one of her inspirations, because also very much one of my inspirations. And in this particular case, it's a poem I wrote in November 2016. It was inspired in turn by a workshop, a masterclass I attended with poet Henry Cole that was run by Poetry Ireland here in Dublin. But anyway, that's by the way. I'll get on with it. The piece of Leonard Cohen, well, the inspiration is complicated a little bit because Leonard Cohen's song or poem called "The Future," people may be familiar with it. It's a very long piece, so I'm not going to read it all. The lyrics are quite, well, they're very repetitive as well, but it's a long piece. But it goes, you know, I've seen the future, brother, it is murder. And when they said repent, I wonder what they meant. And get ready for the future, it is murder. Things are going to slide in all directions. So that's sort of a notion of how the lyrics go. What happened was, of course, that the same day as, in the same 24 hours as Mr. Trump was declared the winner of the 2016 election, Leonard Cohen passed away. I said sort of tongue in cheek at the time, he must have decided it was time to go. But anyway, so this is a poem that came out of it all. I'm going to read it now and you got to get on with this. And it's called Lullaby to a Lost Future, November 2016. The sudden thud of darkness falling down impacted like a punch, a big kapow, as in some comic strip. Who's laughing now? This darkness shrouds another kind of clown. A poet picked this moment to depart. He left us his vision of disorder. Said he'd seen the future. It was murder. We wonder now what Leonard meant. The start of time when freedoms will be put on hold, a portent of a deadly darker age. Blue light projected on an empty stage, plain truths denied by lies that will enfold and gather like a poison to be puked. But beauty still will flourish in the roots of trees no longer free to bear new fruits. All those who live for flowers, when rebuked, in search of sleep will count each petaled bloom and dream of landscapes only they can see. Great landscapes where again they will be free to hold a light to shift this heavy gloom. That's it. Thank you. Thanks for fitting me in.
Oh. There's not a day that I would not want to hear a Phil Lynch poem. So I am so glad him interjected. Thank you, Phil. And what a connection, of course. And those lines of, yeah, the whole story fits together, where the inspiration comes from and of that day. And Leonard Cohen, that is a package of a poem that fits all of that together to create that poem. I love the stories that go into the creation of poems equally as I'm enjoying the poems. I love process. So this inspiration, these trails of inspiration are quite inspiring. Thank you, Phil Lynch. Great to have you with us today. And now we'll get to hear from Don Krieger. I'm very, very curious to hear whom you will share with us today.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, everyone. I was inspired actually by listening to everyone, particularly Lynda, to go ahead and read something. Denise Levertop's poetic voice was very clear, kind, compassionate, confrontational, and truthful. Here's one of her poems. It's from 1970. The day the audience walked out on me, and why. May 8th, 1970, Goucher College, Maryland. Like this it happened, after the antiphonal reading from the Psalms and the dance of lamentation before the altar, and the two poems, Life at War and What Were They Like, I began my rap and said, yes, it is well that we have gathered in this chapel to remember the students shot at Kent State, but let us be sure we know our gathering is a mockery unless we remember also the Black students shot at Orangeburg 2 years ago, and Fred Hampton murdered in his bed by the police only months ago. And while I spoke, the people, girls, older women, a few men, began to rise and turn their backs to the altar and leave. And I went on and said, yes, it is well that we remember all of these, but let us be sure we know it is hypocrisy to think of them unless we make our actions their memorial, actions of militant resistance. By then the pews were almost empty, and I returned to my seat, and a man stood up in the back of the quiet chapel near the wide open doors through which the green of May showed and the long shadows of late afternoon, and said, my words desecrated a holy place. And a few days later, when some more students, Black, were shot at Jackson, Mississippi, no one desecrated the white folks' chapel because no memorial service was held. Yikes, let's see here. Oh, here we go. And I want to show you this picture while I read my piece, which is part of a group of poems in a section in this book titled The Big Lie. Martha's Dowry and George's Will. Our first president was one of the few who was not carried away by power, Robert Frost. He was 11, heir to the family farm and 10 slaves. Later that year, he bought 8 more and yet another 7 as a young man. He lived 3 generations. At his death, he owned 123 and 153 more. Martha's dowry doubled in their 20-year marriage. His and hers hostage to the law, destined for return to her husband's heirs. George's death freed his own, though he left it to Martha to sign their deeds. He was our first king in all but name. Principled and elegant, said Abigail Adams. The picture on the left is the slave quarters at Mount Vernon, George Washington's home. And on the right is a dormitory at Auschwitz. The difference is that Auschwitz was never meant to hold families generation after generation.
That is John Krieger, everyone. And what a powerful poem by Denise to be followed by you. I had a feeling that you would share one of Denise's poems, and I've heard you read that poem first before, and I'm really glad that we have it on the program for today, along with your work. And, out of respect for this amazing program today and everyone's time, I want us to stop there for today and remind you of the poets that we've heard from today in our amazing Poets Focus on Inspiration. At the top of the hour, we heard from Giulio Magrini, Ken Burch, Jane Fitzgerald, David Brydges, Mona Zamfirescu, Josephine LoRe, Elizabeth Lara, Mona Lynch, Lynda V. Crawford, Catherine Ronan, Max Vandersteen, Phil Lynch, and Don Krieger. Would you unmute and share your appreciation for this most, dare I say, inspired and inspiring reading
Bravo,
today?
bravo.
Thank you, everyone.
Terrific afternoon.
Oh my
Thank you.
God.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Just brilliant work, everyone. Thank you
brilliant
so
work,
much
everyone.
for the
Absolutely.
feast.
A feast.
So nourishing today. Thank you.
Well,
Edifying was a word Lynda
edifying
used,
that
and
Lynda used.
amen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we have launched into May with the fervor and inspiration that will carry us through the rest of the month, no doubt, following April's Poetry Month. We have not skipped a beat at all. And we head next week, everyone, to our new books showcase. And what is really amazing about this new book showcase is that we will be ironically featuring, we have been a program long enough now that these featured poets are featuring another book that they have written since we've been on the program. And so it's a really exciting to be able to hear the next collections by Amy Berry, Michael Durack, Tave Nice, and Yuyutsu Sharma. You will not want to miss this reading of this new book showcase. These four are phenomenal members of Cultivating Voices Live Poetry, and it will be a great, great joy to celebrate their new books with them and to hear them. And I know I'm going to love every moment of this reading. I hope you will join me next Sunday. And if not, join us for our wild card open mic coming up in 2 weeks. It's the wildest way to share poetry, the wild card open mic. Well, that's it for today, my friends. I'm gonna have to see where my mom is. She wasn't here on the program today. So I'm gonna reach out and tell her she has to watch today's program. And I hope that you will come back to this program for a source of inspiration many, many times over. I, of course, hope that we'll do this program again. I love this format, and I love hearing the connections and the process and the poetry that's emerged from our Poets Focus today on inspiration. With immense thanks to Kim Ports-Parsons and Don Krieger for their inspiration for the readings. And as I say every week at the end of our readings, you know, go forth, folks, take very good care of yourselves, take exceptional care of your beloveds, and keep being inspired to write your miraculous poetry. This is Sandy Yannone for Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. We'll see you next Sunday. Have a great week, everyone.